Did you know you can do your own home inspections? It's crazy. We've got some really good tips that will teach you what to look for when buying a brand new home. Get to the point that this is the home you want and you know it's good and well built because you did your own inspection. You need to dive deep into the bones of the structure. Is that house working as far as mechanical? Has it been leaking? Has it been rot? Are there smells, rodents? Maybe take a drive down the street, see what the neighborhood looks like. Maybe come back at nighttime and see what the neighborhood looks at nighttime. There could be people roaming around and there might be partiers next to you. Whatever it is, you really need to focus. But let's get down to the meat of it here. What does the house look like as far as the bones? And what do I mean by the bones? I mean, was it built properly? Does the furnace work? Does the plumbing work? What's the wiring like? So let's dive into each one of these aspects and I can give you some really good tips on what to look for and what matters. The age of the home is really going to tell you a lot about the home. Some houses that were built in the 70s are riddled with asbestos. So anytime you want to do a renovation on that house, you're going to need to do some testing and get an abatement team to come in and remove all the hazardous material. So let's talk about the plumbing. You want to go through and check to make sure that everything works. Does the toilets flush? Do the sinks work? Do the faucets work? Do the tubs and sinks drain? These are some of the major things you want to check for right away. Another thing you need to look for is open the cupboard door and look underneath. You'll determine what kind of water lines are in there. If you see a gray, it's a very light gray water line, it's usually about 5/8 in diameter, that's called poly B. This is something to watch out for. So if you're buying a house now from the 80s, chances are in the next 10 years, one of those pipes is going to break open and is going to flood your home. You need to replace the poly B if you're buying a house. This is a must do, and you should allow about $7,000 to $8,000 to replace all the poly B within your house. It's not a matter of if it's going to leak, it's when it's going to leak. So what kind of water lines do you have? Now, if you've got a PEX, which is usually clear or white, those are good water lines for now. But if they're gray, that's poly B that needs to be replaced. If it's copper, if you go into where the fittings are connected, if there's green and a lot of buildup, like a calcium buildup, it's not long before your copper pipes are going to start leaking, and that will have to be replaced as well. If it's red, that's usually a Kitech product, which that is a major problem and they always leak. So that was only on the market for a few years, sometime in the late 2000s or early 2000s. Does the toilets and the sink actually drain or do they gurgle? Can you smell a funny smell coming from the drains? Is your house on septic or on sewer? So if it's on sewer, all the drainage goes out to the city and it's the city's problem. If it's on septic, when was the last time the septic field was serviced? Was it done by a proper contractor? Was it approved by the health board? Ask the real estate agent, I want some proof of the last time the septic was serviced and if it has been done according to the health standards. I mean, it's kind of like you're buying a car. Like, it's a beautiful car, but you look under the hood and it's all rusty. Are you gonna buy that car? So if you're buying a house, you really need to look under its hood, so to speak. So now about mechanics. What's heating your house? Do you have air conditioning, a furnace? How old is the furnace? You wanna make sure that the furnace is in good working condition. Turn the furnace on, see if it runs. Does it make a funny sound? Maybe pull the filter out of the furnace. If it's really, really dirty, then you've got an idea of the previous owners. Were they clean people? Those air filters, if it's a cloth air filter, which are the cheaper ones, they really need to be changed every 3 months. Moving on to electrical. Some of the houses built pre-70s have aluminum wiring. Well, aluminum wiring can be a fire hazard. The electricity coming through the aluminum heats up the aluminum, expanding and contracting, and then there ends up being a gap which causes arcing in the electricity. What are your future plans for this house? Do you drive an electric car? Do you want a hot tub? Do you want to put a suite in later on? Maybe ask to look at the electrical panel, take a photo of the electrical panel, and send it to a good electrician. Does this panel look like it's maxed out? If the house predates back to the 1950s, chances are you don't have ground wires in there, and you have to come in and either put ground wires in or have special arc fault breakers. Before you go to the house, grab a plug tester. It's a 3-prong little device. It's only about that big. And you plug it into the wall, it tells you the code, whether or not there's a ground or there's a hot neutral or whether or not the plug has been wired properly or not. And go around to every single plug and just check them. A really good thing you want to look for when buying a new home is how well that house was taken care of before they cleaned it to show it. I always say this, go into a spot that you wouldn't think you would normally clean. Like, let's say, pull the drawer out under the stove or look under the fridge in a spot that most people wouldn't even think to clean. Bathrooms, kitchens and bathrooms, especially around the tile. The tile grout needs to be replaced every so often, and so does the silicone that in the corners. Any kind of dark or discolored silicone or grout, that's a bad sign that there's some black mold growing there, and it needs to be replaced. It's also a sign that nobody ever cleaned there. Some people smoke in the house. Look around. Usually on the tops of the walls, around a foot to a foot and a half down the walls, you'll see kind of a shiny like drips, and that's nicotine because the smoke gathers up on the roof. And if that's the case, well, you probably need to repaint. So you want to allow that in the price difference to repaint all the walls. And it's not just repainting, you need to use Kills. It's a primer that goes over the smoke. Because if you're going to paint over nicotine, all it's going to do is come right through the new paint and smell. So you want to prime it first. So when you're buying a pre-owned house, the owner may have done some repairs or additions, maybe a deck addition, maybe a kitchen addition, maybe a new office off to the side of the house. You want to make sure that they were done properly, either by a licensed contractor or have a good indication that there's permits involved. You don't need your house sitting on a pile of rot. Does the grass grow up kind of behind the sidings? These are some really good indication that there could be some potential rot just on the structure of the house. If someone, let's say this is the top of your foundation, the soil on the outside should probably be down around 6 inches from the top of the foundation. So you should see concrete here. If the siding is here and the soil is here, chances are that 2x4 or 2x6 that holds up that whole wall has already started rotting out. Do the fingernail test. So you put your fingernail in, and if it's hard and it wants to bend your fingernail, great. If it's going in a little bit, it could be just a softwood. But if all of a sudden your finger wants to actually just keep going into that wood, or you can peel out some of the wood really easy with your fingernail, that's a clear indication that the wood is rotting. Water damage. If you look down at the floor or the baseboards, when water hits wood, the wood likes to expand. It also has a slight line, like sometimes it's just kind of like a line on the baseboard. Bring a moisture meter with you. It's got 2 metal prongs on it. You put a 9-volt battery in it, and you put it into a spot that you think may have some water damage, and it'll tell you if there's water damage or not. Now, anything above 6% could be likely an issue. Anything above 20%, it's still very, very wet, and there's an issue. If your toilet's been leaking, or you had a flood around the dishwasher or fridge or wash machine, look for these things. So go to each one of those appliances where water is connected and take a look at the floor, the baseboards. Here's some good indications. If the baseboard looks like it's swelling up, like it's got almost like a blistering look to the front of it, then you know that there was a leak there. If the floor, let's say there's a laminate floor, and when the 2 pieces of laminate butt together, if water's affected that, the ends start to turn up. So you get a little bit of a ramp at the end of each board. Those are like very, very minor things to look at, but huge indicators whether there's been a flood or not. If there's no bathroom fans or hood fans or any ventilation in that house, the chances are there's going to be some mold issues or some rot issues. So you want to make sure that there's a fan. If there's no fan, you should put one in right away. Get a licensed HVAC installer to come and put the fans in for you. It'll save your bacon, and it'll definitely make your house more enjoyable to live in. You don't like bacon?
Save your bacon.
If the information I provided to you today has actually helped you in any way, don't forget, like, subscribe, hit the bell notification. I want to hear from you. Thanks for watching. Is this interesting?
Mm-hmm. I find it fascinating. But I also find weird things fascinating, so I don't know.
Yeah. Was it recording when I did that before?
What, the cough?
No.
What?
That whole spiel?
Yeah.
Okay, good.